Eskom has signed a 3-year wage agreement with major unions. Workers affiliated to the NUM, NUMSA and Solidarity will receive 7% hikes across the board for 3 years, we're told. It will apply to all permanent employees from the 1st of next month. Unions have been locked in wage talks with the utility since back in April, with some originally actually demanding a 15% increase. Let's unpack this now and bring in NEDLAC constituency head Thulani Chifuta, who joins us via our video link this morning. Great to see you, Thulani. Thanks as always for making time. Look, the unions are raving about what essentially it's gotten to get them here, and they're putting this down mainly to the new leadership at Eskom. Do you agree with that?
Well, essentially for us, the most important thing is that electricity and energy generally is a very essential part of our lives. And in as far as it is generated and provided, that must be appreciated. But what is of essence is that it becomes an insult to the majority of the millions of South Africans that people who work in the supply and the generation of electricity continue to get salaries, but the people themselves do not get the electricity. So we see this essentially as a negotiation in good faith that is shown by the new leadership of Eskom to the unions to say, all along, what brought us here has been bad management decisions, and therefore, in this case, let the workers who have always been overlooked, who have been working hard, be given the opportunity of the benefit of what they deserve, with the hope that they will pull their weight, they will pull their socks in more being committed and in the generation of electricity for the people to benefit. So it is a very strategic and intelligent move on the part of the new leadership of Eskom.
That's interesting. What do we do then with that argument that Eskom simply doesn't have the money to even get to a 7% wage increase, let alone that 15% that was initially asked?
As I just said, that if we acknowledge that what brought us here with Eskom has essentially been bad management decisions, and therefore, once Eskom acknowledges that and starts to shift, we may actually not even need new money for Eskom, but with proper governance and leadership, with astute management and prudent management of the financial resources of Eskom that we already have now, we may actually be in a position to afford that. No one has been living on free electricity in South Africa. Everyone has been paying.
Wow.
But the money that South Africans have been working hard for to pay for their electricity has been taken by managers of Eskom through the channels of corruption. And therefore, in this case, we believe that Eskom can be able to afford this.
Okay, so to circle back to my first question, you too are essentially saying that what ultimately enabled us to get to this agreement is in fact the new leadership, their approach, what they're able to concede to in those negotiations. As far as you're concerned, that important variable that's changed, not only in this round of talks, but over the decades, is around who essentially was representing the power utility.
More than the color of the jackets of the people who were in the negotiation room, more than the face that was there, we believe that the foresight of the leadership is what brought us here, which is an essential ingredient in this process, because who is in the room should not matter, because whoever comes in next in the leadership of Eskom should be able to come to essentially the very same conclusion without wondering as to what were the previous leaders smoking.
Okay. I wonder then what you reckon should be expected of workers now that we've gotten here. I mean, you've alluded to the idea that now that this agreement has been reached, there is a hope that workers will essentially meet their end of the agreement, which is to ensure essentially that things at Eskom, specifically at power stations, run the way they should. But more than that, to ensure that the sabotage, which was allegedly also at the hands of workers, is reduced. Is that a fair expectation, you reckon, in exchange for this agreement?
it is a fair expectation, and even beyond, for the people of South Africa, that when we continue to pay, in fact, it should be across board in the whole of the public service and anywhere that people pay for their services, that when there are people who are employed to provide those services, it is them who must serve the people of South Africa and not the other way around. When you have people who are paid to provide services to the people of South Africa, it is them who must actually make sure that that which the people are paying for is provided for the benefit of the people of South Africa, without them looking for other channels of additional income on top of what they are being paid for. And so even in this case, it is the most basic and fair expectation for the workers that are at Eskom to do their best to make sure that that which in the line of production has been counted as the reasons why we cannot get electricity, it happens no more. They are in the first line of defense for the benefit of the people of South Africa.
How confident are you, though, that that will happen?
It is an expectation that we must express. It is an expectation that must be met with very dire consequence management if it is not happening, without any pandering.
All right. Of course, don't get me wrong, it's lovely that we've been able to reach this agreement, and to do so, by the way, without even heading to the CCMA. Unions have pointed out to us that this is the first time that this has happened in decades, and I think even that shouldn't be lost to us. It raises questions about whether or not you reckon we are getting better at this. You know, are unions and those who represent the public sector, even through being leaders in SOEs, getting better at finding each other without having damaging, protracted negotiations that ultimately affect South Africans?
Most definitely. As the community constituency at NEDLAC, we essentially believe that social dialogue is the currency of finding solutions to our socio-economic challenges in South Africa. And therefore, our focus must be on finding solutions to the issues than problematizing each other as those that are involved in the social dialogue itself. And so it must be commended.
Yeah. The details of this agreement, I mean, all we know so far is that it's going to be over 3 years. And I'm smiling because part of what unions had always been skeptical about is whether or not they can trust government. In some ways, we've been here before, haven't we? A 3-year agreement is signed. Down the line, there's something that takes place in the form of something like COVID-19. And government comes forward and pleads poverty as reasons why it can't fulfill this 3-year agreement. What do you know has changed around the sentiment of unions who were initially skeptical because of the trust deficit, but have now gone on to just not only sign an agreement, but a 3-year deal?
Well, the unions have not hidden the deficit of the confidence and the trust that they have, even on issues that relate to collective bargaining generally. And in this case, I think what should go to add into the currency of social dialogue on top of just the negotiations to find solutions is the fact that transparent leadership and management of the Eskom as a utility must include communication transparently and honestly with the workers as a very critical stakeholder in the life and the affairs of Eskom, to such an extent that if we get to that point where, in all honesty, the financial circumstances of Eskom prove that there have to be changes, they must be alive to that reality. In the same way that once this commitment is made, it will go a long way in building the confidence, not just of the workers and the relationship between employers and employees at Eskom, but for the whole of the collective bargaining in South Africa. The management and the leadership of Eskom must do everything to make sure that now that a commitment has been made in this regard, they must plan and budget accordingly to make sure that that commitment is being met. And as I indicated earlier on, where South Africans see that the benefit accrues from what they pay for, South Africans are very decent and disciplined law-abiding citizens in their nature, they will continue to pay that which they get as a benefit.
Thulani Chefuta, thanks for speaking to us. Thulani is a NEDLAC constituency head as we get your reaction to that agreement that's been clinched between unions and Eskom.